So now let's create a background and see more about the options of the scrolling background script and the another script. Okay, so let me get this one out of the way over here, and let's save a new scene. I'm going to save it. All right, and so this is the scrolling background script. Let's create a background from scratch. In this first video, we've shown that this one has a box collider. So let's say you start from a sprite. So let's go into the art, and you have sprites, and they have a bunch of backgrounds over here. Let's see how we can go about it. So let me start this one. So this is the first background. You can see here it's listed under sprite 2D UI. And that's it. I'm going to let me delete the preview over here, and let me just set this one to none. So as if we are starting from scratch. I'm going to drop a UI into the scene. So now it's a game object, because the background needs to have a game object and not a sprite. So if I apply this, I can't even put it inside. Okay, so this is the background. I'm going to reset its position, and I'm going to add a box collider to it and its trigger. This is important that it's a trigger one, and I'm going to put it inside the prefabs folder, inside the demos tutorials, just to make it easy. That's it. So now we have a prefab. Let me delete this one. A prefab that can be used inside the background. Let me just create a couple more. So I'll go into sprites. Where did it go? Yeah. Let me add this one, the second one, and let me add this one. And I'm going to also add these, which are going to be used on a separate layer. So I'll copy this one and copy this one. Let me just add to them box colliders. It's trigger, and I'm going to make prefabs out of them the same way. Now, if you're wondering why didn't I enable using a sprite directly into here, because I had the idea that maybe later on we can add a 3D level or something, and this way, when you're using a game object, you're not limited by anything. You can that game object can be 3D, or you can add more elements to it. So there's some idea to it, and again, where did that folder go? Here, tutorials. Let me just drag and drop. So all these now can be used as backgrounds. I'm going to delete them, and just to make it tidy, let's give them. And by the way, you can also, for example, just duplicate and just change into another background, just the same. Okay, so back to the background. So now you have background layers. So this is the first layer, main background. And this one is now currently repeated 3 times. And you see over here we have a number called active background limits, which determine how many times that an active background is shown. I'm going to show how it works just in a second. Let me add a few more backgrounds. So here the first one, let me put a second one, a third one, and the fourth one, and that's enough. Let me keep this one. Okay, so I want the first background to show only once, and the second one only once. And let's repeat this one 3 times, the dark one, and we're going to see how it looks like. And this one 1 time. Let's make it 2. And this. And this is the option of what happens after this sequence has played, where this background is duplicated once, this once, 3 times, 2 times. Let's see how it looks in preview. So you can see the first background, the second one, the third background, which was just the stars, is 3 times, and that's it. So what happens when this sequence finishes playing? You have an option of here loop sequence, where it It starts from the beginning. And another one which only loops the final image. You can see here that it switched to the active background limits. You can change it. And you have stop at final image where it just stops, or finish sequence where after this has passed, nothing happens, no more background stops. So let's make it loop sequence, and let's hit play, and we'll see what active background limits means. Let me save. So you see the active background limits means how many backgrounds are active at the same time. Now the absolute minimum you can use is 3. Let me show you, for example, what happens when it's 5. So you see that 5 backgrounds are repeated, and this is the treadmill. All right, let me put it back to 3. And by the way, the treadmill script currently controls everything that goes on the background. And maybe for later, I don't want to make any promises, but even if you can code, you can just expand it and use it to control the speed of the whole scenery. Let me just play. For example, you can, when a boss comes, you can switch this one to 0, then the game can be faster, then slower. Now it's not implemented. You just can control it manually, but it's not implemented in any other way. But you can perhaps add some scripts and control it. So that's the face background layer, which, by the way, controls the dimensions of the face background, will determine what you can call here the background dimension, and which might affect the camera view field. So the background dimensions are terribly important, and you would need to have the same background dimensions for all the background layers. We'll get into that later on. So that's the first layer. Let me add another layer here. Let me call this one transparent layer test. And let me just put this one. This is the second one. Let me put this one. And this one, second one. Let's just make them 2. As you can notice, the count have changed because the active background limits is set to 3. We can just keep it at 2 for now. But if you really want to have only 2 backgrounds repeating, you can go around it by making another layer. But you probably wouldn't have to do this, but let's just keep it this way. And now just to remember the depth index, if we keep it at 0 and the first background is at 0, they will be on top of each other. So I'm just going to move this one to 5, and let's preview. You can see what's happening right now. You have another background. And let's see, the speed was 2. Let's change it to 4. Let's make it quicker. And let me make this one stop at final image. So now we have this background layer moving. And this is the final, as you see, because this layer is set as a stop at final image, it has just stopped. All right, and that's it. Let me just, this is the scrolling background. Additionally, you have another script called background object spawner. Let me go to Shmup boss, background, and I'm going to choose background object. Okay, so now we have the background object spawner. I'm going to add the first layer. Similarly, it's just like the scrolling backgrounds, you have different layers for them. Here. By the way, if you click Alt and do like this, it will collapse all. Alt, it will open all. Just a little handy trick. Okay, so let me call this one, let's add nebulas, a layer of nebulas. And similarly, I'll go to the sprites and find myself a nebula somewhere, or space cloud. Let me add some space clouds. No, 3 are enough for now. Let's add. Same thing, they need to have box colliders. And let me make prefabs out of them and drop them over there. and I'll go to the background. So you have quite a lot of options over here, but there's no way I can give you the option without even having to put them. But once you see they are all straightforward, and again, maybe I didn't explain this, whenever you put your cursor on something, you can see an explanation of what it does. So for example, let me prefabs to spawn. I'm going to add the prefabs we have here. So we have these 3 prefabs, and I'm going to spawn them in random order, and I'm going to spawn them infinitely, which means that this spawn count will not be used. If it's not infinite, this will determine how many copies are spawned from them. And let's pull 6 out of each, and let's spawn them from the beginning with random times. Let's keep the scale. Let's make a random scale from 0.5 to 2, and let's make this one on top of everything with a depth index of 80. Spawn them from the top. Random spawn position, minimum random position over here, and maximum over here. So this means that they will spawn from all the sides. If I put them over here like this means it will spawn from this half side. Again, if you just click over here, it's just the max. You just try them. They are pretty simple. And let's give them random speed from 1 to 6 without fiddling with the rotations. And let's play. I probably needed to add a spawn offset, but let's see. So you see now we have clouds, but they just pop because we don't have a spawn offset. So I'll go over here, and there's something called spawn offset somewhere. It's this one. So this one determines how far off things are spawned from the edge. So now I put a value of 5, and let's see where things are spawned, because they are on a depth layer, which is very soon. Just one moment. Inside the backgrounds on treadmill, here, pull background objects. If you see it now, things have spawned far from the edge because we have set the spawn offset to 5. And I could add maybe more layers. I could add an asteroid, make more layers of the same, but it's just the same procedure. And all the settings, once they are quite easy to understand what the function does. And that's about the background script, mostly what you need. With this, we end the tutorial. I'm going to save it, the scene, and over here I have, so this is the background nodes. They need to be a prefab, need to have a collider 2D, and all of them must have the same size. So for example, if I try to add one more test, let me, for example, let me use this one. If this one is not clear, let me use this one, which is, for example, this one is horizontal. And let me just preview. You would see that a background which is not on the same size will give this effect. So any background you use, make sure just it's the same size for all the layers. And that's it. Let me delete the preview. That's it, done. Let's move to the next tutorial.